Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Saturday morning, the 11th of January. So we're going to stick with the Delphi case today because there is a lot happening. There are a lot of interviews happening that we need to talk about. I did a live stream yesterday afternoon my time, going through the Fox 59 interview with Andrew Baldwin and Jennifer Auger, which was very interesting. You know, the guy from Fox, is he called Russ McQuaid? He was very pro-prosecution, so it was great to have questions from somebody who is pro-prosecution, because the defence team can't be accused of just doing soft interviews, can they? Jennifer Auger has also been interviewed by someone from the news channel WTHR, which I will review maybe later today or possibly tomorrow. Now, in yesterday's live stream, I promised to do a refresher video on the timeline, the state's theory compared with what we actually know from hard data. So I'm going to do that. It's probably going to be tomorrow though, because today I want to talk about a juror who's come forward and been interviewed by the Murder Shit podcast. That's what we're going to talk about. Let's go.
It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Before an angry Andrew Baldwin left the courthouse, 13 News overheard him speaking to Richard Allen's wife, saying, "It ain't over. The world's watching. The world sees what's going on."
So I can't play you clips from that podcast, although I will leave a link to part 1 and part 2 in the description box. Kindly, someone on the Delphi Docs sub on Reddit has provided the transcript. Can't play clips because the Murder Shit podcast will copyright strike. That's what they do. But they can't stop me reading the transcript. Now, I'm not going to read the whole of the transcript. I'm going to skip down to the meat and potatoes of this thing because they talked a lot initially about jury selection. I will mention one thing about jury selection, though, is that this particular juror got a really good impression of Nick McClelland. She thought he was really nice. The moment that stood out in her mind focused on Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland, who handled all of the prosecution rounds, and lead defence lawyer Bradley Rosie, who had some memorable moments throughout the jury selection process. The juror says, "I thought it was funny where Rosie came with explaining reasonable doubt, and I think it was just all the different types of evidence maybe, but the little cards that he held up, like, 'Let me do it for you,' I couldn't believe that. Yeah, we all started on the wrong foot." And he says, "What did you make of Rosie and what did you make of McClelland?" "Yeah, I thought McClelland made the nervousness kind of feel comfortable. And you said it best when you guys were talking about it." Because, you know what? She's watched all of the Murder Shit podcasts now. She's gone and done some research, and I would expect that jurors would do that, and because they found Rick Allen guilty, she's gone to all the places that supports her view. So she's got herself into a very comfortable situation of confirmation bias here. He really just kind of gets on your level and makes you feel comfortable, which I think is just realising that this is something really stressful for just like, you know, a normal person that has no idea what's going to happen, which really gives you like an element of trust. You just wait. If you haven't listened to this, right, if you haven't lowered yourself to the level of going listening to them, just wait. Just wait till the end. This is crazy. All right, so Nick McClelland has got the jury's trust here. Rosie, on the other hand, was very opposite of that. I think kind of almost felt like he played on the nervousness. Like, I felt almost like it was an interrogation. Now, that doesn't sound like Brad Rosie to me, but look, if that's her perception, that's her perception. She did have a positive view of Jennifer Auger, and she liked Andrew Baldwin, so that's great. So maybe for trial number 2, if that happens, maybe Andy and Jennifer should handle jury selection. I don't know. Maybe it's just this one juror's perception of Brad Rosie. She also liked Stacey Dina from the prosecution because she wore a different outfit every single day. Because that's important. All right. She wasn't keen on Luttrell, though. Oh, one more thing I'll mention before we get in the meat and potatoes of this thing. She thought Richard Allen was creepy because he stared at people. And if he looked in her direction, she would look away. Whereas other jurors stared him out. No. What did she think of the testimony? So Anya says, she also had concerns about Richard Allen's second interview, the one he did with Lieutenant Jerry Holman of the Indiana State Police. That was something that weighed on her mind, the juror says, because I've listened to the podcast, so that when I hear what you guys said, I'm like, okay, well, that's true. I just feel like he was very tough in the interview, with realising, like, that's how they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be, like, interrogations are supposed to be walks in the park. That makes total sense. But at the end, I thought we'll get into, like, deliberation and things. But that was one of the things that we rewatched as far as the video evidence. We watched the interview. They watched it on the Saturday. And so, we were able to have a discussion about him, and it was kind of mixed. Like, I think a lot of people were like, well, that's how they're supposed to be. Like, that's how interrogations go. And for some reason, for me personally, the interview, I just thought, a guy's never been in with the law before, and he didn't call for a lawyer. He clearly doesn't know what he's supposed to do, but he's not admitting to it. So I was like, the interview to me just felt like he was just too calm and really didn't know anything to have done. So is she saying there that she thought that Rick Allen was telling the truth during the interview and that Jerry Holman was maybe not very likeable? It is interesting that at one part of the interview, she said the first time the jurors took a vote, it was 9-3. 9 guilty, 3 undecided. And then it turned to 8-4. With 4 undecided. So she didn't say what made those 4 change their minds. Anya says, speaking of videos, what did you guys make of there? Because we didn't see these. So we're talking about the Westville videos. We were weirdly just like watching you all react to them and then trying to be like, everyone's like, wow, the jury is really mad at the defence. Or the jurors really mad at the prosecution. Everyone was just like making it up based on your momentary expressions. But what did you guys make of the Westville videos? Juror says, it's funny. That's what everyone's like, yeah, they're just looking at our faces. And I'm like, oh no, I didn't even think about that. I hope my face is on. Okay, you got your makeup on, you got your game face on, what are you talking about? But yeah, so the videos, I can't remember if it was because there was a set of camcorder, like, walking through the prison, and then there's incel. I don't remember, like, what we saw first. And you guys were able to see either of those, right? No, not any of them? Okay. Well, I'll try to record the camcorder footage first. It was essentially like what you would think. Okay, so the jurors being in a prison and seeing people interacting with Rick Allen like they did, like torturing him. Okay, makes sense. Makes perfect sense. There's someone, there's guards around them. They're holding the camcorder, so she thinks that's normal. She thinks them walking around with a camcorder is normal in a prison. All right. And they're, taking him somewhere to go somewhere throughout the prison. And I guess kind of just reference, like, going into it. They did give us, like, a slight warning of, you're watching the videos today and going into it. But it wasn't as bad as I expected. I was expecting, just from hearing about them, for it to be so bad. So him spreading feces on himself and eating his own feces, that's not bad, is it? Like, because if they want to show all these to us as bad. Like, it's got to be real bad. Personally, because I'm huge on, like, especially Westville is horrible, horrible prisons. And, like, thank goodness they're building a new one. But it's the way it is there. Just so bad. Okay, so that's all right then, cool. I figured that's what, they're trying to portray in the video. But these videos, it didn't seem that bad to me. Like, it just looks like a prison. Like you'd expect. And one of the times he's like in what looked like a small wheelchair thing. It didn't have big wheels like a wheelchair, just like small ones on all four legs. But they were carrying it. They weren't even carrying it like 4 people. And I think they were just taking him to get that x-ray. He was getting an x-ray because he was seeing his head on the wall. No, banging his head on the wall, that should be. And he was very, probably one of the worst ones because he looked so black and blue. Like his whole face and head was black and blue. So she didn't think the videos were as bad as what she expected. Right. So definitely disturbing to see. Yeah, I thought it was not going to be that bad. So now she's saying it's worse than she thought. And then there's, the end cell ones. He's near most of the time. I think it was they put on the paper, which ones he had clothes on and which ones he didn't, so that we were prepared, I guess. But little Max messed up a couple of times. So, are naked, but he wasn't. And then some was naked or whatever, vice versa. Keveline says, little Max is Max Baker, the recent college graduate who assisted Rosie in the trial. Sitting together for so long, the jurors built up some lore of their own throughout the trial. So right at the end of part 1, the juror says that she was playing devil's advocate. She says, I was really trying to play devil's advocate and just see it from the defence's perspective almost, I guess. So I really did try to question everything. I just felt it was a really hard thing to do. And I just didn't want to get it wrong, no matter what. Well, you got it wrong. You absolutely got it wrong. I don't blame the jury, though. I don't, because the amount of evidence that the defence weren't allowed to show, even the sketches, they weren't allowed to show. So the prosecution had it easy. It's no surprise to me that it was a guilty verdict. It was a surprise to Jennifer Auger, though. In her interview with WTHR, she said that she was surprised. She was absolutely gutted at the verdict. They thought they'd done enough for reasonable doubt, but you never can tell. All right, let's get into part 2. So the juror says, I really like Harshman. I think professionalism goes a long way to me. So Harshman, all right, she liked him. She says, they were all very professional. So there wasn't anyone that I saw that, discounted other than Sarah Carbo. She discounted Sarah Carbo. Not surprising. So they thought they'd throw that one out. So the muddy and bloody man was thrown out. Not like she's a hard person to believe, but I think the defence did a good job trying to discount her. And she goes on to say, I think for me, again, devil's advocate, and this is kind of a deliberations thing, I kind of threw out there, I guess, it's the whole science of the bullet. It wasn't Oberg as a person. She was professional and did an amazing job. She had so much information, she's so smart. And she believes in her clients. And that's what I tried to explain to everyone at deliberations. Is I don't think she's intentionally lying. I just can't say I believe for sure that the evidence is exact. So she didn't think Melissa Oberg was lying, but she didn't believe in the science. So she disregarded the unspent round. So what did the prosecution actually have? Apart from the lies and the psychotic confessions, take the PCA. She's thrown out Sarah Carbo. She's not convinced of the unspent round. What else do they have? I don't know. So when they brought in, I forgot his name, Warren. Warren, I know that. He's evaluated it with just using photos, and you're definitely not supposed to do that. Oh, she knows that, does she? And I don't know if it was the defence cross on Oberg or Warren's testimony, but one of these, maybe both, just really had me sceptical on the bullet. So in making my decision, I didn't consider it at all. So she threw out the unspent round. So Kevin says, can you tell us about the deliberation process? We kind of question that evidence. We would kind of remove it. So like Sarah Carbo, for example. But we did it on the map, a big map. So we sat there and put little sticky notes on what times and what happened. So we could put it on a map, like when they were passing and what time and when the phone quit moving and things like that. So the timeline was important to them. They made their own timeline. How can then they not see the glaring issues with the timeline? If there is a retrial, all the more reason for the defence to absolutely hammer the state's theory and how the hard data absolutely cannot possibly fit the state's theory. That pretty much took a long time. It took the rest of the first day. And then there was a little bit of the next, that Friday, the following day. We finished it up in the morning. So Kevin says, you said you took several votes. We did not vote the first day at all. We voted the next day, and that's when it was 9-3. This juror was so impressed by the whole thing that she's going to go to law school. Great. So Kevin says, the deliberation actually took several days. Was that a frustrating process? The juror says, I thought it was necessary. I feel like we were there, listening to everyone for 3 weeks. I felt like a few days to consider everything that we've heard is required almost. Well, it isn't actually, but whatever. I know towards the end there wasn't at any point a time when we're like, okay, we're soon all going to vote the same. It wasn't a point where it felt like that. We went through all the confessions, things like that. A lot of Tuesday seemed to be just a lot of talking and consideration. Again, that was the day we took a vote at the end. It was 3 undecided, 9 guilty. So that day we decided on Friday. They wanted us to let them know if we were going to need to see the video evidence ahead of time because they had to get both counsel in there, the judge and all that. But then however long it would take to get it up on the screen. So all things considered, they wanted us to give a day in advance. We then just said, let's figure that out. We're wanting to see the video wise and go from there. We decided we wanted to watch both of the interviews again, mainly Holman, I think, or no. I think they mainly wanted to see Mullin. I wish I could remember why. But there's something specific in the interview they wanted to see again, so I don't know whether she's talking about the undecided here. Then we also watched the Bridge Guy video. That was edited or remastered or whatever they did, so it stays upright and whatnot. Then there was one that was just the audio of the Bridge Guy video. Kevin says, you mentioned that you had some issues with that interrogation or the interview video with Holman. All right, and she says, so again, having no experience or seeing real interrogations or any experience of that kind of thing, I felt, especially Holman, he just kept going on and on and on, going on. Even though he said, I'm done. Which, granted, why don't you just get out of there, walk out? But I was just putting myself in that position. I was like, if I was being asked those questions and I didn't know how that got there, how am I going to explain it if I didn't know? So I just felt like it was overdone in a sense. Kevin says, what did you make of the confessions? You said it was one of the areas that you kind of took a lead on. She says, yeah, of course, what stands out to everyone is the van. And that's part of the deliberations that, let me see, so Saturday we pretty much watched all the videos. That's all we had time for. We even stayed late because the videos were pretty long. So we really didn't have much of a discussion that day. But we did take a vote after we watched all the videos. And there was, that day, 8 guilty, 4 undecided. So watching the videos turned one from guilty to undecided. Oh dear. So back to the confessions. One of my things that stood out to me in a sense of thinking that he could be guilty is the mention of the van. Outside of that, I really didn't put any weight to anything else, although it's very eerie. So, the van, Brad Webber's van, that came by at 2:30. The thing that only the killer would know. Well, actually, that van has been talked about for years, since 2017, in all different ways, different people's theories, because we've always known that a van went by with Brad Webber driving. He said he got home between 3:30 and 3:40. The fact that the defence weren't allowed to produce evidence of what Brad Webber said in 2017 to the cops is absolutely shocking, seeing as that seems to be one of the only things that this juror was convinced by. That's shocking to me. That's absolutely shocking to me. And he says there's a lot of weight to it, yeah. I was really struck with the thoughtfulness that you put into this, and what you're saying makes so much sense. Surely Anya and Kevin know about all the talk of the van in the past, and that is absolutely not something that only the killer would know. Anya says it sounded like the timeline was perhaps more important than any of this sort of flashier confessions. The flashier confessions! Maybe with the exception of the van. I'm curious, you know, like you mentioned, kind of people kind of getting a little bit on each other's nerves. So it got heated. How did people come back from that? Juror says, it was a lot more relaxed than I thought it would be. I thought there would be a lot more turmoil than there was. There's really just one time when not everybody's getting a chance to talk, you know. So on the Monday, they had an open discussion and they decided to take a vote. After I heard the first few guilty, I just knew. Once the last one was read, our foreman couldn't believe it. He was like, are you serious? Unanimous? And we're like crying at this point because I already knew like I was going to be done. And it was just an overwhelming feeling of just one that it's over. It's decided and it's pretty sad. But the outcome like sucks either way. It absolutely does when you find out that you've been lied to. Listen, if Rick Allen doesn't get a second trial, there is so much more corruption in Indiana than any of us ever knew. It's absolutely insane what this juror focused on. Disregarded the unspent round, but was persuaded by the van, which was a lie. Rick Allen has 130 years in prison based on a lie. That's insane to me. That's shocking. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, folks.
Good to go. There we are. Good to go.